G'day everyone. You know, I recently purchased and reviewed the Glycine Air Pilot, and overall I was quite impressed with it. And I say was because if my past collecting habits taught me anything, I ended up flipping it after just a couple of months. And in my personal true to form trend, I found yet another fleeger to add to my rotating collection. So let's put our seats in the upright position and review this Hamilton Khaki Air Race model, which I now refer to as the Air Race. So here's a specs list of all the details, including physical dimensions, weight, water resistance, crystal, movement, and price. And if you like my video content and haven't had a chance till now, a like and subscribe always helps. Now, if you've watched my earlier review of the Glycine Air Pilot, or have ever seen a watch of a B-type Flieger layout, then the Air Race will be a familiar sight. That familiarity starts with the indices running around the outer edge of a dial, with the Arabic numerals representing the minutes at every 5-minute interval, along with a faint minute track running in between, with slightly thicker loom-filled tracks at every 5-minute point. And at the 12th position, you have the oh-so-familiar loom-filled triangle for orientation, albeit upside down. And from there, the Air Race starts to shed that familiarity and demonstrate a more unique look, with its loom-filled rectangles at every other cardinal point, blacked-out day complication at the 4:30 position, and these gigantic sword-shaped hands that make checking the time a cinch. An interesting touch to these hands is how they're both semi-skeletonized, with loom only filling the base of the hour hand and the top half of the minute hand. Along with looking unique, another reviewer mentioned that this method also helps with distinguishing the difference between the hands, which we'll demonstrate later. A big chunk of a dial's real estate is occupied by the 3 subdials in the middle. The top 2 subdials help to keep track of the time when the chronograph is activated, with the left subdial counting the minutes with 30 minutes being its limit before it recounts from 0 again, and the right subdial counting down to the nearest tenth of a second. The single subdial at the bottom acts as a small seconds hand for everyday time telling, with the small khaki and Air Race block text printed in its middle. One thing I love about these subdials is how they're slightly recessed into the dial, as it looks akin to an instrument panel you'd find on an old aircraft, especially if the small second subdial, as a horizontal line makes it look similar to a tone indicator. And these dials, along with the hands, are powered by an ADA 251-274 quartz chronograph movement. At this price point for a Hamilton, you definitely can't expect an automatic, but it is still a high quality movement that boasts a potential battery life of up to 6 years, although that will likely be affected by how often you activate the chronograph. And speaking of which, along the right hand side of the case you have 2 push buttons at the 2 and 4 o'clock positions that activate this feature. Each button feels sturdy and is easy enough to push and emits a faint yet satisfying click to let you know it's doing its thing. The top pusher starts the chronograph seconds hand, which jumps along faithfully at 1 beat a second, and pressing the button again pauses for time, with the right subdial spinning to register the 10th second. You can then either push the same button to resume the chronograph timekeeping at that point, or press the bottom pusher to reset the time. As an added bonus, you can use the bottom pusher for split time reading. Simply push it while the chronograph is in use to register the initial time, and it will continue to count while the hands are frozen. Pressing it again will skip the hands ahead to where they should be based on the time elapsed. Not a feature I imagine many people will use, but nice to know it's there. Underneath the triangle at the top, you have the printed Hamilton logo and its namesake just below it done tastefully, and in tinier words straddling the 6 o'clock indice is Swiss made. One thing I really appreciate about the Air Race is that everything, from the hands, indices, logo, and subdials, is all sized appropriately. There's a lot going on with the dial, yet it avoids looking crowded or busy. From a readability and functionality standpoint, it's really well done. And thanks to a little bit of spacing around the subdials, you can also appreciate the vertically brushed metallic finish on the main dial. And I love how the light plays with it, where it transforms from an almost jet black appearance in darker settings to a lighter grey hue when you get it out in the sun. Protecting the dial is a flat sapphire crystal for added scratch protection. Better still, this example seems to have a decent amount of anti-reflective coating, so glare doesn't affect its legibility too badly. The crown is stamped with the Hamilton logo and is screw down, which helps contribute to its advertised 100 meters of water resistance. I'll mention now that the pushers, despite their knurling, are not screw down. This does make me a little nervous about getting the Air Race too wet, but I'll trust that Hamilton have placed some seals around them for protection. That, and you typically wouldn't go swimming wearing a Flieger. Back to the crown, and its screw operation adjustment is straightforward and simple. The crown feels heavy when turning it, but the action is still smooth and overall feels very high quality, especially as there's no wobble at all on the hands when spinning or adjusting it. For added protection, you have the crown guards that still give just enough clearance to provide sufficient grip on the crown's teeth. The caseback continues the aviation theme of the air race by illustrating this large image that looks like a radar chart intersected with crosshairs. On the outer edge of this display is the Hamilton branding, along with its specifications and smaller text circling the outer circumference. It's certainly more interesting than a lot of other casebacks I've seen on budget watches, and the screw down feature makes it easier to get it off and on. The laser etching looks and feels a bit deeper as well, so hopefully it'll remain present and legible for longer. Moving on to my mixed feelings, I reckon there are 3 divisive elements at play with the air race. The first I mentioned was the quartz movement. And now there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, but some may prefer an automatic flavour for that old school and pure experience. The second one, which you've all noticed by now, is the use of photina on the hands and dial print. In the air race example, one benefit at least is that Hamilton went all out with the theme, so that the only colours on the dial are greyish black and photina, so it has a more uniform vintage look. But there are some disadvantages with photina, which I'll mention one of later, and there is a bit of a love it or hate it sentiment in watch communities towards it. The third element is its dimensions. The air race isn't gigantic, but with the crown and pushes bumping the diameter out to almost 47mm, along with a lug-to-lug close to 50.5mm, it will wear too big for some, and might be a no-go for those that prefer modest measurements. But at least the case height is very manageable at a pinch over 11mm, so you can still slip this under a sleeve. And with a 22mm lug width, you'll be spoilt for choice with strap options. The case finishing uses a mixture of brushed along the sides and the tops of the lugs, with the exception of the polished chamfered edges and bezel, and these will readily show signs of wear. While I don't expect many wearers to be overly rough with the air race, it would have made more sense to have gone with a brush look all over given its military looks. But on the plus side, the finishing and overall look and feel of the case is high quality, and what you'd expect from a Swiss-made watch. The supplied leather strap has more good than bad features here. It's a bit of a 3mm thick and feels smooth yet firm and durable to the touch, and even has a pleasant leathery smell. The light tan colorway of white stitching is a great match and suits the theme of the watch really well. Another cool feature of the strap is the use of the sign buckle, along with a double buckle tongue, which not only looks like the Hamilton logo, but also aids in providing a more sturdy fit on your wrist. Being a thicker strap, however, means that there will be a break-in period, so you'll need to persist with wearing it to get a good fit. My bigger gripe with the strap is this in-your-face indent of the Hamilton logo with wings. Maybe some people won't care, but I find it too garish. I think Hamilton could have gone all out with the Flieger theme and just removed that logo and replaced it with rivets instead, but that's just my 2 cents. The loom on the air race is okay, I guess. You can never expect great loom longevity on a watch that uses photina, and the air race is no exception. All of the indices, including the larger cardinal points, lose their glow not long after the lights go out, but thanks to the thickness of those hands, the loom on these hold out surprisingly well, and it's for that reason that I'm not going to be completely negative on the loom. Although what disappointed me is that Hamilton could have done what Glycine and other watch brands have done, and add loom to the numerals around the dial for added glow and presence. It's a missed opportunity if you ask me. This also acts as a handy segue into the negatives of the air race, but thankfully there's only a couple to mention. The date complication blends in nicely at the dial, but it is placed awkwardly at the 4:30 position, which can throw some people off when they notice it or try to check it. And as nice as the ADA movement is in the air race, one of its more fiddly characteristics is that there's no quick way to set the date. To do this task, you need to pull the crown to the first position and turn it clockwise or anti-clockwise to move the hour hand forwards or backwards respectively until you reach the desired date. So if today was the 17th and the date wheel was set to the 1st, you may get carpal tunnel in your fingertips once you finally roll the date over. Although at least once it's set correctly, you won't have to turn it too much when adjusting for shorter months. So after owning and wearing the air race for a bit over a month, I can confidently say that if you can find it for around a $300 price range, it's definitely worth purchasing. However, I will mention again that the air race possesses several features that can be rather divisive among watch collectors, especially its photina look and larger dimensions. So if either or both of these elements are a showstopper for you, then you'll probably be looking elsewhere. But if that's not a concern, then the air race has a lot of great things going for it, including its build quality, Swiss heritage from a reputable brand with horological significance, and a dial that packs on a lot of features and manages to look both practical and handsome. Although I wish they were more generous with the loom. If you currently have previously owned a Hamilton Flieger, I'd like to hear your thoughts about it. But that's it for now, and thanks for watching, eh?